let's talk about the Joint Commission and the role a Joint Commission plays in reviewing a hospital's performance.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bork. Good afternoon, Mr. Hunter.
I thought you said you didn't have a report.
I don't know, sir. You're not
listening.
Perhaps I'm not being clear today. I do not have access to the 2018 report.
That sound was Hunter's soul leaving his body.
I thought I buried this Dracula several years ago.
But you have an opinion to a reasonable management probability that the failure of the medical executive committee to address this caused or contributed to the harm of Mike Kowalski.
Objection beyond the scope.
You can answer.
Thank you. I do believe that this failure on the part of the governing body contributed.
And this particular individual happens to also be remarkably charismatic and have phenomenal hair to combine with my, I guess, phenomenal beard.
Et tu, Rob, you're going to jump on the good hair stuff too? Really?
Dude, why not? I mean, I can't keep this thing in order.
Thank you for that. And speaking of looking fabulous, coming to the program right now, Dr. Joe Corcoran, who we have also labeled here as Dr. Good Hair. How are you?
I'm great.
Good evening to my friends on the east coast of the U.S. and Europe. Early good morning to my friends in the Pacific. It still astounds me that this trial and the subsequent delivery that we've been doing attracts such a diverse audience. It's really it's a huge honor. It's an enormous honor to have this many people join us from so far away, and in this case to do so on fairly short notice. So sorry I didn't get something up sooner. I was actually planning on a different program tonight, but the guest was not ready, which happens. So turns into an Ask Me Anything. I think there's some interesting things to talk about tonight. I've already gotten some incredible questions queued up, and Gothic Brina, if you want to highlight a few, or if you would like to shoot me a text or an email with a couple, by all means, feel free. But thank you so much for joining tonight. And welcome to, we are in the second half of February already. So trial-related news, couple of things. Number one, it's official. The attorneys representing Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital have, in fact, filed their notice of appeal. No surprise there. They had 30 days from the judge's order. I think they took 28 or 29 of them. No surprise, because when they file that, it starts the clock ticking for when they have to actually submit what it is that they're appealing, right? You don't just appeal and get a new trial. You appeal on very specific points of law, and they are areas, and again, I'm not a lawyer. In fact, as a obstetrician practicing in the state of Florida for a number of years, I tried to stay out of their world. But as it's been explained to me, you appeal specific issues from the trial, from the judge's ruling, from the application of law that you feel were inappropriate and that you feel that the appellate court should be taking a look at. So they don't get to bring in new testimony. They don't get to bring in new evidence. They don't get to change their theory of the case. It really is an appeal about the way that that actual case took place. And again, as those of you who joined us for the conversation with Paul and Yoli last week, and I know Paul's in the audience. How are you today, my friend? It's nice to have you back. But, in the conversation with Paul and Yoli, you heard us talking about how difficult the jury's job was and how complicated the issues were. And my editorial comment that I feel that the last one or even two missives from the judge, his order and him addressing the motion in support of juror misconduct, I feel that his writing, the words he chose, the style of writing that he used struck me as a real love letter to the jury for a job well done. This was not easy, and there were 12 jurors that sat through almost 9 weeks of testimony, plus several days of jury selection, voir dire, filling out paperwork, answering questions, wave after wave until the 12 were chosen. Of course, 6 of them ended up being jurors that actually deliberated. 5 alternates, because one left for a medical issue, either the last day or day before, penultimate last day. But there were 11 to 12 people that gave this trial everything they had. So now the hospital's attorneys, and I suspect that it's going to be the same attorneys from the jury, but also with a large appellate team around them, are going to be trying to poke holes in some of the judge's decisions, some of the testimony, some of what was let in, what was kept out, et cetera, problems with the trial itself. That should be filed within 60 days, which would put us from mid-February, mid-March, mid-April. Typically, there is some consideration that if one side or the other requests more time, it's usually not a tall hill to climb. So, in fact, the appellate briefs may not be completed until sometime long after mid-April. And of course, the big something that happens, potentially big something that happens in between the motion being filed last week and the actual briefs being filed with the Second District Court of Appeals is mediation. Now, mediation is, and again, you're getting an OBGYN's explanation of it, right? So take it for what it's worth. But mediation is when both sides agree on a lawyer or a judge, a professional mediator is someone who is recognized as understanding the law. And so it's really someone that both sides will try to make their case to the mediator and to one another. And so they will try to find a solution. And there has been ordered mediation in this trial prior to the actual trial beginning. Those mediations, from what I understand, were very not fruitful. Let's just put it that way. They did not lead to any substantial meeting of the minds, any substantial agreement on anything of substance. So that will happen per the judge's order. It has to happen on or before the 15th of April. It is likely that will be a multi-day a multi-day event. So that will happen probably in the mid-April timeframe. I don't know how much of that is going to be visible to the public. I will offer that I will share whatever I'm allowed to share at the appropriate times. But the neat thing about the mediation this time and why it's different, and I'm Pollyanna. I'm always a glass half full kind of view. Right now, there's a $208.4 million judgment that has been entered by the judge. It is accruing interest at a rate of $52,000 per day. Scott over at Recovery Addict has done an incredible job with his interest clock, adding, I think it's $36 a second. I think it's $60 a minute or something crazy, but all in, it adds up to about $1.5 million of interest each month. So the longer that we go to a final outcome, post appeals, et cetera, the more interest is accruing. It's a 9.1% rate that is mandated by state law, my understanding. So that's different. The judgment is there, the interest is accruing, and we now have a verdict that was not just, 51-49 or 60-40. It was a shellacking. All 44 or 47 items on the jury panel, on the jury form, went in favor of the Kowalski family. And so, perhaps there will be a different mindset going into that mediation than there was pre-trial when, maybe there was greater optimism for a different kind of outcome. The other thing that makes me optimistic that mediation will be fruitful is this. Judge Carroll, in his order, was very, very smart about identifying not just that he wants mediation to take place, but he wanted mediation to take place with high-level representatives from all invested parties. He obviously will have the attorneys from both sides. That's typical. He has mandated that the Kowalskis be there, both Maya and Jack, since they are the adults. Kyle can be there, but isn't required. But the adult members of the Kowalski party will be there. Leaders with decision-making capability, direct reports to the CEO, direct reports to the president of the organizations, from Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, from Johns Hopkins Mothership in Baltimore, from any and all insurers that potentially could have to stroke a check as a result of this verdict. So around the table will be keenly interested parties, and if they follow the letter and intent of Judge Carroll's direction, they will be leaders from the various organizations who have decision-making capability to avoid it's kind of like what you get at a car dealer, right? You make a deal with the sales rep. And what does he do? Let me run it by my manager, right? There shouldn't be a need to run it by the manager or run it by the finance guy, right? The intent of what Judge Carroll wrote was to have decision makers and commitment makers in the room. So fingers crossed, the mediation finds a solution that is palatable to both sides. And of course, the perfect solution at mediation is that both sides feel like they left something on the table or that they, got nicked. But it's that balance that a good mediator tries to strike. Because at the end of the day, what we're really hoping for is that the hospital can get back to its job of hospitalizing, building their new campus up in Pasco County and extending their reach and helping more kids in the Tampa Bay community, continuing to build their programs in all around the Bay, including down in Sarasota County, where they have a clinic. And Mr. Shapiro spoke quite passionately about maintaining the quality and level of care for the kids in Sarasota County. You want the Kowalskis to be able to continue to put this trauma behind them. You want them to begin the healing that has been mandated by this tragic outcome, losing a wife and a mom for, again, what everybody that I've talked to that has met them really feels like they're just a terrific American family, down to earth, doing the right things. And you want them back on their feet. You want them healthy inside and out. And that will happen faster, my opinion, after everything is over and they're allowed to move forward with their lives. And, listen, I'm sure that the system and the hospital and the insurance companies are not excited about $52,000 per day of interest. And again, that's not a random number. That is a number that was mandated by state law. So that's coming up. And so there's not going to be a ton that happens between now and probably mid-April when the appellate briefs are required to be submitted. But there's going to be a lot happening behind the scenes. And again, I will share with you whatever I am allowed to share with you. Obviously, much of what happens behind the scenes stays behind the scenes for a reason. So just wanted to let you know what was going to be happening as we start to move into this next phase. I will also tell you that I had the opportunity to speak with a second juror. Paul and Yoli were very sweet to introduce me to one of the other jurors and got a very different perspective. Same outcome, same sense of feeling that the Kowalskis had gotten wronged and that they deserved everything that they got, but a very different perspective. It was a parent who had children and related to it as a parent. Very, very interesting. And hopefully I'll have an opportunity to bring that story to you. I would love to speak with the other jurors. I'd love to speak with some of the alternates. They certainly had opinions because they sat through 9 weeks of testimony and submitted questions routinely, took notes. I think it was 52 or 54 legal sheets. Really kind of a I would love to hear their thoughts, since we didn't get the opportunity to have them weigh in on the actual verdict. There's a couple of other things that I want to talk about that have been in the local press just in the last couple of days. But before I get to that, I did invite everybody to submit questions, and I did get a couple of terrific questions already. Oh my goodness, where did I put this? Yeah. Give me a moment. Sorry. I had some had some really terrific questions submitted, but now I can't find them. Lovely. Here we go. So I do want to start with Ben's mama, because this will be the easiest one to answer. But Ben's mama, God bless you. Thank you so much. Ben's mama wrote, not a question. I just want to send Dr. Joe a big virtual hug and a thank you. I'm feeling it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ben's mama. You are a bright light in this world. Thank you for starting this channel and for sharing all your knowledge and goodness with us. You are awesome. Thank you so much. A couple of interesting questions have been asked, and I said this is titled Ask Me Anything. So a couple of interesting questions, and one from my incredible moderator, Gothic Brina. Her partner was diagnosed in 3rd grade with Perthes disease. And Perthes disease, and her question to me is, did I ever diagnose it? And Perthes disease is something that's diagnosed by pediatricians, not by obstetricians. Think about it this way. I would specialize in manufacturing and delivery. Someone else takes over maintenance, and that's the pediatrician, the neonatologist. So the pediatrician would be the one to diagnose Perthes. And you are correct, Gothic Brina, that Perthes is typically diagnosed in infancy or early childhood, but actually is fairly commonly diagnosed up to the age of just before the teen years, up to ages 11 and 12 is not uncommon at all. So Perthes disease, for the non-medical folks, is it's an abnormality with the top of the ball that sits at the top of the hip joint. And there is a problem with the way the blood flows to the top of that joint. And so the ball that fits in the socket in each of our hips starts to deteriorate, starts to degenerate, and can cause, obviously, lifelong problems ambulating. And surgery and replacement is frequently used, so is frequently required. So, thank you for the question, Gothic Brina. A simple answer: no, I've never diagnosed it, but I'm quite certain that having delivered 3,500 kids plus or minus, I suspect that 1 or 2 of them have had problems that have developed later in life, and I'm sorry that your partner is dealing with that in his journey. Another great question came from I believe it's Michelle Edwards, 7454, and Michelle wanted to know where to do humanitarian work. Talked about, let me see, where is your question? Let me find it. When I do that. Yeah, 5 years ago, this is I love how you frame up your question, Michelle. Hi, Dr. Joe. 5 years ago, I spoke up for myself. 2 years ago, our wonderful God blessed me, answered my prayers. I had said that I would be the voice for the voiceless and the face for the faceless, for those who have suffered an injustice. I want to do humanitarian work, but most places are corrupt. Can you please advise me? Thank you so much. Michelle, thank you for sharing your story. And I would actually love to hear more about what it was that you did that required you to speak up for yourself, because that's advocating. That's what we're talking about. Is taking it to the next level, not accepting what you're being told simply because that's what you're being told, and doing the right thing. I just read a really neat story about a teacher that in a room full of grade school kids took a fish out of a fishbowl and left it out on the desk, and it was flipping and flopping and what have you. And then the teacher exiting the room said, if anybody gets out of their seat, they'll be suspended, they'll be expelled, right? So across the entire classroom, these kids are watching this poor fish gasping for air and flopping on the desk. And they said it was about 30, 35 seconds later, one little kid jumped up out of their desk, grabbed the fish, put it back in the fishbowl. And the teacher came back in and said that was the point of the story, is that, and teaching this to children, but we have to keep it in mind as adults. We can't let fear of getting in trouble keep us from stepping up and doing the right thing. And Michelle, you clearly have shared that you've done it, and I'd like to hear more about it. And I would love to help you find a great outlet for your interest in doing humanitarian work. I will tell you, I agree with you that just because a charity has a IRS designation, a 501c3 designation, does not make it a great charity. Too many of the charities that we see on TV, very little of that money ends up going to help the people that we think we are helping when we make our donations or when we provide our sweat equity. But having been a part of some incredible organizations that really are focused on doing the right thing, nothing is better than being a part of a team that truly makes a difference. But humanitarian work, we can think big, like Doctors Without Borders. But I've always been a bigger fan of charity beginning at home, making sure that those around us are getting what they need, and helping people to help themselves is the most gratifying for me. So, Michelle Edwards, I'm going to encourage you to just continue the conversation, and I'll be happy to help you find places that will take your energy and your commitment and your passion. And thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for being a part of this organization, part of this community. AC's Wildflower, not going to get into the real estate issues in Sarasota, but I will tell you that AC's talks about, way off topic, but do you know of any good Airbnbs in Sarasota? But talks about coming down to crew races at Nathan Benderson Park. Nathan Benderson was a developer, a very large and successful commercial developer in the Sarasota Bradenton community. And I believe it's now the third generation of the Bendersons are still helping to shape what Sarasota and Bradenton are looking like and will look like. Fantastic family. They are not a faceless corporation. They are a community asset. They are a family that does the right thing. One of our friends is a member of the family. He brings his kids and his wife into the breakfast company very routinely, and so he's a big help to the community. He's been a big supporter of my wife's family, and I'm grateful for all that they do. I will also tell you, AC's Wildflower, that probably one of those races, your child has raced against my niece. She's big into crew. I've actually had several members of the family and the immediate circle of friends go through the crew programs that go through Nathan Benderson Park, and in fact, one of them is heading to college in Massachusetts on a crew scholarship. One of the kids that really honed his craft that I delivered, 28 years ago, actually has been to one and soon will be to his second Olympics in crew. And of course, it was all because it was such a happy, healthy delivery. That's why he's a success. But no, the discipline and the discipline that you learn with crew, the physical development that you get from that really challenging exercise is hard to beat. So I appreciate you supporting your child in crew. Hey, I hope to get to pour you some coffee at the breakfast company. You know, one of the stores is just to the south on University Avenue, and one of the stores is just to the north on State Road 70. So come on by. Hopefully we'll get a chance to meet. Let me see. Cat Toes 1609. What is the best way to gauge? What is the best way to know how my local hospital and local doctors are doing and how they are rated when it comes to standards of care? It's a great question. And, you know, we'll explore that in greater detail. But, you know, one of the things that, again, my incredible moderator, Gothic Brina, did, she sent you a link to Health Grades. And Health Grades is a commercial for-profit entity that tries to give you a glimpse of how they're doing. I will also tell you that the Joint Commission can give you rankings on a 0 to 5 scale about how the hospital is doing. CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the federal government, they also have a star rating. I will warn you that that star rating is no more current than, at the most, it's 2 years out of date. And that's just the way that they collect their data. It's directionally pretty good if you look at trends, but if you look today, you're getting information from 2021, early 22, right? So whether it's relevant, can't really say. Here's the tricky part with doctors. I will tell you that I still think that word of mouth is perhaps the best ruler that we can use. Here's the tough part. If you are looking for, let's say that you're looking for an orthopedic surgeon because you have a shoulder problem, right? I have my rotator cuff. I tore it and had it repaired a number of years ago. That is a subspecialty within orthopedics. So finding someone who is a good orthopedist doesn't necessarily get you someone who's good at doing shoulders, because you know the folks who are the best at repairing shoulders are not necessarily the folks that you want replacing your hip or replacing your knee when it wears out. So, and vice versa. So when you take in word of mouth, it's important to ask why your friend, your family member is recommending that particular physician. Is it bedside manner? Is it they're whip smart? Is it because they had a procedure or a surgery and had a great outcome? But is that procedure relevant to what it is that you need, right? So, you know, I will tell you that there is no one go-to that I rely on, with the exception of the Leapfrog safety ratings, because Leapfrog ratings that is a not-for-profit organization that is solely focused on patient safety, and patient safety leads to better outcomes, right? And their data is collected twice a year. So it's very current. And it's possible to go, you're graded from A, B, C, D, and F. It's possible to go from an A to a C or an A to a D. It's possible to go from a D to an A, although that is exceedingly rare. So I think that from a hospital perspective, Leapfrog safety, the Leapfrog score for safety is highly reliable. I think that health grades can be helpful in looking at specific physicians, but again, you want to make sure that that what they're highly rated for is relevant to your needs. So great question, cat toes, but hard answer to come up with. You know what? I've written it down as a topic that we can go into in greater depth. Let me do some more research for you and see what we can come up with. Dr. Joe, have you ever heard of Claudia Morandi, an advocate for pain patients? Patty P, 3429. No, I have not heard of Claudia Morandi, but I will be looking for more information about Claudia after the show wraps tonight. So thank you for that. Data Lisa, maybe the hardest question anybody's asked. What are your goals for the advocates for 2024? I will tell you that number one, they are very much in formation. Number two, I've already talked about one of them. I want to keep bringing information to this group that builds their strength, this group's strength and confidence and skill set at standing up. Standing up as Michelle Edwards talked about, speaking up for yourself, advocating for yourself, giving you not only the facts about the medical situation, or it need not even be a medical situation, but not only helping you establish the fact pattern, but also helping you develop the confidence and some techniques in how to do that. I am hoping that next week we will have our young teenager who really learned the fine art of speaking up for herself early. I'm really excited about bringing her to you, and hopefully we can make that happen next week. Let me see. I've gotten some messages from Gothic Brina. Uncivil Law, thank you for your super chat. I guess I can light that up, right? There we go. Can you look at the growth that has formed on my neck? It is starting to talk to me, and I don't like some of the things it's saying. Well, Kurt, I would tell you that that growth that has formed on your neck may, in fact, be your head. If it's the thing underneath the cowboy hat, that's what it is. And you've been known to ask a controversial question or two from time to time. So I'm not terribly surprised that you don't always agree with everything that you're talking about. But nice to have you in the chat tonight. Thank you very much. And Bama Girl, welcome aboard. Go Gators, but happy to have you in the audience tonight. Let me see. What else has... Sardonisms asks, question, what have you learned from being a chronic illness patient that you wish someone had told you before? I will tell you, so my back pain is something that I have dealt with for 3 decades. It is present in my life every day. Most days, my right foot feels like I've got glass in it. There are days when I feel like one of those giant roofing nails is driven right through my big toe, right towards my heel. I will tell you, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, sardonisms. I will tell you the most insightful comment that changed my perspective about my pain came from a physical therapist who unfortunately just retired, but she was an absolute find for me. She changed everything for me. Her name is Karen. She practiced in Sarasota. She was an amazing, amazing wife and mother and an even more phenomenal physical therapist. But here's what she did. I had bounced around to probably 4 or 5 different physical therapists after I had my accident. My back was really worse off than it was prior to the surgery because of all the complications. And Karen's approach was completely different, because when we sat down in the very beginning and she listened intently and she listened actively to what was bothering me. And then she said, we will never make you pain-free. But if we do our work together well, I will help you learn how to manage your pain so that it doesn't keep you from living any part of your life. And, just resetting the target was super helpful to me. Whereas I had been getting frustrated about not getting better, not feeling better, not not making giant strides. It really became about just not letting it be the focal point of my life. And since that happened, I've become a dad. Um, 20 plus years into a marriage that is incredibly fulfilling to me. Patty and I laugh with that. We're 25 years later. We still love each other. We still think, we still kind of think the other one's cute. It's kind of neat. It's a really neat place to be. So clearly, that pain that had dominated my life for so many weeks and months, when my life was turned upside down, I wasn't sure if I was going to, be able to live a normal life and walk a normal distance. And, hell, I couldn't stand up long enough to do a C-section, right? That was taken away. And so it had been a giant focus. But with Karin's help, Sardonis, I will tell you, Sardonism, sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing that. I will tell you that the way that she helped me change my perspective about what the goal should be, and to focus on what I do have, not on what I don't have, changed everything for me. So simply put, that would be the lesson learned from being a chronic illness patient that I wish someone had told me earlier. But you know what? I think I ended up hearing it at exactly the right time. So hopefully that helps somebody in the audience. Marmar, welcome back. Question: is it hard to be in the public eye now that you are, in many eyes, a celebrity? Well, even my wife doesn't think I'm a celebrity, and I will tell you that we had, it is still pretty funny. Every once in a while, you do get recognized out in public, and I talked earlier in an earlier episode about Crystal K pulling up alongside Patty and me as we were heading to my brother-in-law's memorial service, and she's like, roll down the window, and she said, "Are you Dr. Goodhair?" And I think that was such a big laugh that it gave both Patty and me. First, second of all, it was incredibly well timed because we were going to a very sad event, but she sent us there in a much better frame of mind. So it does happen from time to time. But trust me, I've got a wife and 2 kids that keep me humble. I've got 6 siblings that are focused on doing the same. I've got a lot to improve on in my life. So there's no big head any time around here. Good hair, yes. Big head, no. We're going to try to keep that limited. But thank you for your question, Marmar. Made me laugh again. Kay Sheldon, are children that are born premature more prone to have learning difficulties? So the historical answer was yes. But I think that the consensus is shifting. And I think that the quality of the care and the intensity of the care that kids who are born early or born with birth defects get can make a huge impact. So Kay Sheldon, who asked the question, please don't think less of me for copping out. I'm going to pass on that. I'm going to pass on being any more specific about that, but I do promise I will bring that back as a topic of discussion. In a future episode, okay? And then finally, Viva Iverson asks, do you know what anti-nausea med was prescription in 1970? It was round milk white pill. I was in grade school in 1970, but thank you for thinking I look that old. So I'm sorry I can't tell you, but I'll bet you that somebody in this audience has a pretty good idea of what medication it is that you're asking about. And if you want to give me more information about why that's an issue, happy to address it. So thank you for your questions. And Gothic Brina, if you have any more, by all means, just keep sending them along. As Kurt from Uncivil Law showed, when you put it into a super chat, it makes it very easy for me to see. Catherine Green, what about the nursing shortage? Great question. So Fred talked about the nursing shortage a little bit when he was on 2 weeks ago, because he is a nurse, but he's not in day-to-day nursing any longer. And by the way, Catherine, thank you for your super chat. So the nursing shortage is an acute problem. Part of the challenge to answering it is that hospitals are not static. It's not like a Walmart where you need 40 employees to do all the functions around the store. When a hospital gets busy, you can't just let people go, self-service on aisle 9. You need to have teams devoted, committed to caring for those patients as your patient census swells. So, Catherine, what I'm telling you is that when, for instance, during COVID, we were really in uncharted water. This was an unprecedented pandemic. And so we were really kind of preparing for the worst, maybe hoping for the best. But, we had to submit to our bosses plans for how would we scale up and create space for another 30, 50, 100 beds. And we were talking about putting patients in medical office buildings. We were talking about putting them in auditoriums, creating space. I was talking with a big influencer at a very highly regarded hospital in the last couple of weeks. And she was talking about the thousands and thousands and thousands of ventilators that they bought to be prepared for what might happen. Now, thank God, we did not end up hitting the extremes of needing those plans. And in fact, the ventilators that she was talking about ended up getting donated to some of our neighboring communities that don't have those kind of resources, both in and outside of the U.S. But what I'm talking about, Catherine, is that we had a need for nurses that would be developed in hours and days, not weeks and months, right? So if you know that you've got a shortage that you've got to prepare for, then you can invest in nursing schools. You can recruit, you can develop relationships, you can change your benefits. There's a million ways that you can attract talent. But when you need to attract that talent in very short order, sometimes you end up going to agencies that provide staffing. And so it's called contract staffing. So you will sign somebody up to come in and work at your hospital for the next 12 or 13 weeks, for instance. And sometimes they end up staying for 6 months, 12 months or longer. But they are really rental caregivers. And so, another wave that you have to consider, Catherine, is that during COVID in particular, the rate of burnout was incredibly high. The intensity of the work was just overwhelming for some folks. And so we became familiar with the term quiet quitting, right? And so we had people who just had reached their limit and couldn't do it any longer. Do we have a nursing shortage today, right now? Net, if you look at us as the country of the United States, we have enough nurses for the care that we need to deliver today on the 19th of February of 2024. If we were to have another pandemic, we would have a shortage. If we were to, have another, short answer is if the need arises, then yeah, we will be in trouble. So the interesting thing is that there are also a lot of alternatives that are being looked at. So, for instance, can we use virtual care? That's telemedicine. And inside hospitals, we are monitoring patients from a room away or a building away, and extending the reach of nurses. Do we have a nursing shortage? It depends. Short answer. The good news is there's been a lot of investment in nursing schools lately. And so more new nurses are coming into the profession, including my goddaughter. Savannah is a very eager and excited and apparently well-regarded nurse as she's finishing up her first year in the profession. But, as Fred pointed out, 20% of nurses are looking for another job before the end of their first year. And that's because it's a tough job. Culturally, nurses eat their young. Older nurses pick on younger nurses. It's kind of how they were all trained, and so they think that that's what they get to do or have to do to toughen them up. So there's more to come on that. Paralegal, trying to find this name. Paralegal Mandy. Thank you for the super chat, Mandy. Please tell me more about having a year visits with a physician that looks at your comprehensive healthcare needs. My daughter has narcolepsy, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and anxiety. So, there's nothing new, Paralegal Mandy. Great question. Thank you for asking it. There's nothing new about the concept of an annual visit. And I don't know how old your daughter is, but I'm going to guess that she is in her late teens, based on the three diagnoses that you shared. I think that whenever I had patients that needed time, and your daughter is a patient who will need time when she comes to the office, I would encourage you to call ahead and make sure that the office knows that this is not going to be 5 to 8 minutes routine. So I would encourage you to have a talk with the whoever is scheduling the visit, or even ask to talk to the office manager and say, hey, my daughter's having some issues, and I want to just give you a heads up. I'm really going to need Dr. Joe to sit down with me. Let them add extra time into the schedule so that your daughter gets the time that she needs, but that the next patients aren't then delayed unnecessarily. They can build extra time into the visit. But again, that's part of what we're talking about here, Mandy, is making sure that we understand, how we are communicating our needs, and that's advocacy, right? So have that conversation on the front end. I think it will save you an awful lot of frustration on the back end. And Cindy Wilkins, thank you very much for your support. Really appreciate you being here today. So I want to bear with me. I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. But where's present? Share screen. I want to share a couple of things that have really frustrated me. Oh goodness, come on now. I did it the wrong way, guys. I apologize. I actually teed these articles up, but I put them in the wrong browser. I'm still learning, guys. Welcome to being a rookie. Let me figure out how to do this a different way. So I will tell you, there were some really troubling articles in the local Tampa Bay Times over the last couple of days. I've already talked with you about introducing you to a woman who was wrongly incarcerated in maximum security for a crime that she did not commit, based primarily on testimony from Sally Smith that was not did not meet a scientific test. So there was an article this week about unrelated in terms of why, but similar. Tampa Council approves $14 million to settle wrongful conviction lawsuit over a 1983 murder. Robert DuBose spent 37 years in prison before he was exonerated in 2020. 37 years of his life was spent in a prison before he was exonerated. And DNA allowed him to prove his innocence. In fact, two men who were not even on anybody's radar were responsible for the murder. But the story that we're going to hear from Stephanie is similarly heartbreaking. So anyway, that was one of the articles that came out. I hate when I hit the wrong buttons. So this is not related to Child Protective Services, but comes back to family court. This is from the Tampa Bay Times on just this past weekend, February 16th. Headline: Clearwater, Florida woman was denied protection from her ex. 2 days later, he killed her. A judge denied Audrey Peterson's petition for protection from Francis Scosa because, quote, it did not contain enough detail, a court spokesperson said. This is a story about Audrey Peterson, who was 61 years old, and she was in a 20-year relationship with a gentleman, last name is Scosa, and he is older. He's 71 years old, and Audrey ended the relationship, and Scosa threatened her repeatedly. He would park behind her house. He would leave threatening messages in texts and phone calls. So Audrey went to the Pinellas Pasco Circuit Court judge and requested a temporary injunction to keep him away until they could get before a judge and have something decided. The judge turned down the request because it wasn't detailed enough. There is now a lot of outcry, including from local representative Anna Paulina Luna. She's a member of Congress representing that community. Wants the judge to resign, and Representative Luna is not the only one. The Audrey was brutally murdered, and it was preventable. Or at least we could have done better as a community of keeping her safe. But again, I think the reason why I brought this to the community today is because in my mind, it kind of illustrates how different the standards are in a family court versus a civil court, as we saw with the Kowalski trial. And so, with those different standards, and so many times in family court, as was the case for Audrey Peterson, she was representing herself. She had no idea how to build the legal case to get a restraining order put in place. Now, we can't have two. I'm arguing out both sides of my mouth. I'll admit this. We can't have the standard so low that anybody can get a restraining order or, get somebody locked up. I actually am friends with a friend who got locked up because after he announced to his wife that he wanted them to get divorced, she called the police and accused him of doing some terrible things to his daughter that he never did. And that happened on a Friday afternoon of a holiday weekend, and he spent the long weekend in jail. Because he was wrongly accused, but the standard was so low that he at least had to ride it out until he could get arraigned on the Tuesday after the holiday. Was that right? You could argue out of an abundance of caution it was the safest thing to do. Audrey Peterson didn't even get that. So again, where is the right line? And are the folks in family court adequately supported to help them maybe take the extra step and help Audrey articulate the need in a better way? I don't know. Again, this is not my world. I delivered babies. I did hysterectomies. I did pap smears, right? That was my world. I ran hospitals. That was my world. But when I see things like this, you wonder why is it broken and how can we make it better? And, it goes back to humanitarian care and humanitarian work, that our friend wants to do. Maybe this is an area where we can make a difference. These next two articles really, really scared me. So this story, again, Tampa Bay Times, and it is a couple in Polk County, which is the county just to our east of Tampa Bay. Polk County Sheriff's Office has arrested Tonna White and Devin White and charged them with negligent child abuse. Negligent child abuse for this couple. This is a direct quote. The interesting twist is that Tonna White worked for the Department of Children and Families for 13 years. She has subsequently been fired, but she was fired on the day of her arrest. They were taking in children and holding them in conditions that were described as deplorable. Let me read this from the arrest record. The outside of the home contained overgrown grass and junk and debris scattered about the property. The interior of the home was, quote, deplorable, to include moldy furniture, stagnant water, junk debris, and piles of dog feces. And this from someone who is actively working for the children and families of our community. The interesting thing is that just 2 years ago, March 5th, 2021, another Department of Children and Families employee and her husband are accused of repeatedly sexually battering a 13-year-old girl over a period of 10 months. And the story from the Tampa Bay Times goes on to talk about, and I'm candidly, I'm not 1,000% sure why I wanted to share those with you. I maybe because I had to read them, I wanted you to be aware of them. But it kind of goes back to that same question that I have over and over and over in my head. And the question is, why is it so difficult to get some folks to do the right things? And what injuries do we not know our friends and our neighbors have had in their lives that allow them to think that it's okay to take advantage of kids, of elders. It's a challenge, folks, and it doesn't make me. It does not make my heart light. So much of what we talk about here truly, energizes me and helps me, have a much lighter, brighter heart by the end of the episode. This is not one of them, but I wanted to share them with you, and really just kind of hanging out with the. Maybe the thought that I want to leave you with after bringing the whole mood down, I'm sorry, is if you suspect something, speak up. If you feel that a neighbor is in a dangerous place, in my OBGYN practice, we used the bathrooms as a place to communicate, hey, we're here if you need us, because that was arguably the one part of the office where the partner would not typically be expected to go. And it's scary to think about how many times we've intervened and helped somebody, but we were only able to help them because we held a hand out. So I'm encouraging you, don't be like the majority of those kids that sat there while the fish was flopping on the teacher's desk. Be the kid that gets up and puts the fish back in the bowl. Sometimes we have to take chances. You see it all the time on Twitter, on X, people shooting video instead of putting the damn phone down and going over and helping, right? So we really are evolving into a very odd place. And if that's the direction we take, it's going to be really, really hard for us to leave our community not as beautiful, but more beautiful than it was left to us. Nancy D, welcome back. Nice to see you again, and thank you for your super chat. I have a question. My heart doctor wants me to do another stress test. When all my tests he did came out great. I feel it's not worth it, as all stress tests before were great. Nancy D, I would have to understand why he's looking for another stress test. If it's been a number of years, maybe it's worthwhile. Is he seeing something in the labs that you're not seeing? So there, I would want to understand why your heart doctor wants you to have the stress test before saying, just ride it out. But I applaud you for not just saying, okay, grab it and go. Stress tests are not invasive, so there's very little risk to you in doing it, but it is, certainly produces anxiety while you're waiting for the results. And, you have to carve that part of your morning or your day out. So it's not cost free. So Nancy, I applaud you for doing the right thing and questioning, not just submissively accepting, but not enough information here for me to really understand, what it is about this, about your situation that is making your cardiologist want to do another stress test. There is value, I will tell you, there is value from rechecking results from time to time, because let's face it, our bodies change, we gain weight, we lose weight, we age. Unfortunately, we don't unage, but we get older. And again, if you've got other issues like diabetes or renal disease, there may be something that your doctor is seeing that is pushing her or him in the direction of retesting. So don't be afraid to ask the questions, and don't be afraid to propose. Can we delay this another 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, right? Have the dialogue. That's the point. So Nancy, thanks. You're doing a great job advocating for yourself. Joey Jones Donnelly, thank you for your super chat. Is there a list of GYNs that you can ask if they are sensitive to someone who survived doctor assault without making them afraid of taking you on? Who? Wow. Fantastic question. One that I'm going to have to give some thought to, Joey. thank you for being bold enough, strong enough to share that history with this community. I'm going to find a better answer for you than I've got right off the top of my head. Joey Jones Donnelly. Stand by. I will give you a better answer than I could give you right now, but give me some time. You know, I trained at Temple University in Philadelphia. That was where I did my OBGYN residency. And one of my faculty members actually ended up incarcerated in the state penitentiary for committing SA against patients. And so, unfortunately, Joey, your situation, you know, is not as unique and rare as many of us wish and some of us think. So, thank you for that. I will come back to you with a better answer after this program. BBSGMCX. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but thank you for asking the question. A relative was assaulted by her stepfather at 16. When her mom tried to get a restraining order, they said it had to be 2 events in 30 days in the state of South Carolina. I find that so hard to imagine. And wow. Kurt, can you look into whether that's the actual law? Maybe that's the point of your question. Is this statement false? I don't know what that's referring to, Kurt, but I'm gobsmacked that this is the actual standard. Well, I will tell you, in the state of South Carolina, I have many friends that live there, and there's a culture of justice in the state of South Carolina that we typically associate with Kurt's home state of Texas, or adopted home state of Texas. But I'm surprised that if the judge didn't take care of it, that a well-armed friend or neighbor didn't intervene as well. Wow. Not that I'm advocating it, but that's wrong. That's amazing. I am really sorry that that happened to your friend, and I am just absolutely slack-jawed that that would be the standard. Candace, let me... Got it. Great. Folks, what else were we going to discuss today? I do want to let you know what's coming ahead. Again, you know, the first article I shared was about someone who was wrongfully incarcerated, and I'm very excited to bring you the story. Stephanie's story about her wrongful incarceration. And that should be next week if everything goes according to plan. And then I would also like to bring you the teenager advocate. I am also working on continuing to do some interviews with different parties from the Maya trial. I did have a great opportunity to sit down and have lunch with Jack, and really found out even more about that amazing gentleman. He, you know what, I said it when I was talking with Paul last week, with Paul and Yoli, that one of the things that Paul, Juror 1, and Jack Kowalski have in common is that they are the guys in their neighborhood that other neighbors knock on their door when they need something fixed, when they can't figure something out. And I just think that I'm not that guy, because I honest to God, I could get lost on one end of the hammer or the other, but they have a skill, and they have a willingness and an eagerness to help their community. And man, that's powerful. That's really powerful stuff. So Hey, if you've got more questions, fire away. We've been at this about an hour and 15 minutes already, and want to start to wind it down a little bit. But I did promise you that that I would allow you to answer anything. I did want to make sure that you saw we have. Where's our There is if you would like to send a question or send me a letter, let me read it. The address that we now have for the show is scrolling across the bottom. I do have a dedicated studio line. If you are part of the Recovery Addict gallery. It's modeled after Scott's burner phone. The only trouble is that Scott has the technical skill to know how to wire his phone into his production. I'm working on it. He and I talked about a software solution, but I think we're going to have to find a hardware solution. So, because I am definitely not as technically savvy as Scott is. But one of the things that I am really desperately motivated to do is to make this conversation a lot more interactive. I would love to get to a point where we can routinely take phone calls in and have a dialogue. You know, so many of the questions that were submitted in Super Chats tonight were great questions, but I needed more information to really give an insightful answer to them. If we're on the phone or if we're on a Zoom call or what have you, we can have that conversation. We can get to an answer, not just a speculation. So I'm going to continue to work on that over the coming weeks as well. Let me see. That would be great. Why do doctors get defensive? Let me see. One with no name. Question: why do doctors get defensive when we as consumers advocate for ourselves? I will tell you, my doctors don't, but I have kind of resourced my doctors to be open to discussion, and I will readily admit, being a physician in the community for a number of years, that gives me a little bit more of a platform for questioning. I do think that some doctors, and I like to think that it's the minority, that it's they do take offense at being asked to reconsider an opinion, to be challenged. And I don't know, maybe it's insecurity. Maybe it's just that they're having another bad day. I will tell you, this is Joe's theory. If you think about who goes to medical school, many of them, maybe the majority of them, were not the ones who were going to the football stadium on Saturday afternoons. They were not the ones, going out to the parties and socializing and making friends and meeting. They were going to the library. They were trying to pass organic chemistry. There's a lot of pre-med life that really favors the antisocial. So finding physicians that actually listen and actually talk and actually are engaging is difficult, because the system kind of pushes them out to other professions, because they're living a well-rounded life as college students, right? And then, but I will also tell you that there's plenty of doctors that have big old egos. And I will tell you that even as a physician colleague, I've run into many conversations when I was wearing a white coat. I ran into many conversations where my colleagues did not want to hear my lowly OBGYN question about it, right? Of course, I'm just an OBGYN. I can't possibly imagine what's really happening in a heart, especially one that is either about to or just recently went through open heart surgery, right? So no question that's part of it. So here's the part that I'm going to put on you, though, okay? And that is, how are you approaching the challenge? We talked about this with Fred a couple of nights ago. Think honey, not vinegar, right? If you present the alternative in a challenging way, I think it's probably human nature that you're going to get somebody to tense up, somebody to crouch, right? If, on the other hand, you can create the environment where the conversation is truly collaborative. Hey, we're both headed we both want the same thing here. In what I read, in what I've heard, in what other specialists have told me, this is where I thought we were going. Help me understand, right? So the way that you present the challenge may have a factor in how receptive or dismissive that physician partner in that conversation is going to be. Just a thought. Let me see. Gothic Brina just sent me another one from Kristen PSB. Hey, Dr. Joe, question. In your practice, what has been your experience with the use of Pitocin? I have a 2-month-old and was given the drug after 20 hours of labor, and I'm very curious about your thoughts. Pitocin is something that I used a lot in my career. It was very much it was very much in favor when I trained in the 80s and 90s, when I practiced in the 90s and the aughts. Pitocin is the synthetic drug version of oxytocin, which is naturally produced by the brain. And oxytocin, in the right environment, in other words, a uterus that is primed and ready to go through contractions, when Pitocin is administered in the right environment, it can be highly effective, taking weak and ineffective contractions and making them stronger so that you get to the desired outcome, and that is putting a baby in mom's arms, right? Can it be misused? Absolutely. Tylenol can be misused, right? So, but that's one of the reasons why we train for 4 years in learning how to deliver babies, right? So, again, I would be very eager to hear what your concerns about the use of Pitocin, what has you concerned about it. I will tell you that I view it as another drug. It is a drug that can absolutely be channeled for good. It is an easy drug to misapply. And so, again, use it the right way, great things can happen. Use it the wrong way, some really bad things can happen. I hope to God that your outcome from that, Kristen, was positive. And I hope that you do talk about having a 2-month-old. So hopefully that 2-month-old is happy and healthy and causing you to break out in ear-to-ear smiles several times each day. And let me find this. Angela and Vandell says, please see my earlier question, but now I'm trying to find your earlier question. And thank you, Gothic Brina. You just fired it over via text. As a person who helped take down a major laboratory in the 90s with testimony to 2 federal grand juries that included death threats and FBI involvement, thank you for doing the right thing. Holy moly. Angeline, I would love to talk with you. That is a crazy story. my dad was in the intelligence community, and I actually found transcripts of him testifying before Congress and what have you. It makes me super proud. But helping to take down a laboratory and testifying before not one but two grand juries, that's Angeline. There is a story to be told there, and I would love to connect with you and hear more about it. So let's find a way to get in touch. Okay. Mindy S, member for 2 months. Congratulations. Mindy FS, sorry. Congratulations on your 2 months of membership. I love this channel. It just keeps getting better. Well, that is why we're here, young lady. So we're trying to leave things not as good, but better than. Kurt, I'm not even going to put this super chat up, my friend, but you're on a different planet tonight, buddy. Mindy FS question, what is the difference between a doctor and a nurse practitioner? So nurse practitioners can be doctors, but they're not physicians. Okay. So Mindy FS, typically when we think of a doctor, we think of someone who has gone through enough schooling to earn a doctorate of medicine, osteopathic medicine. Those are our doctors in the healthcare, in hospitals that we typically see. My brother is a doctor. He graduated from dental school. I have colleagues that I work with on a routine basis that graduated from podiatry school and optometry school, and so they are doctors. Nurse practitioners, interesting history. Nurse practitioners are nurses who have taken their education to a higher and higher and higher level. So my former sister-in-law is a nurse practitioner, and she was she actually was the first one I ever knew. And they were pretty rare back then. There were only a handful of programs in the country. So if you graduate from nursing school, typically the first level of nurse is a LPN, LVN, licensed practical nurse, and they're fairly restricted in what they can and cannot do. Clinical decision making really comes when a nurse earns his or her RN, registered nurse, or BSN, Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Then there's an MSN, Master of Science in Nursing. You can then do additional educational training to become a nurse practitioner, and that actually permits you in most jurisdictions to work independently but supervised. And so I had nurse practitioners that worked in my practice. They saw patients every day in my office that I did not see, but I was responsible for reviewing their charts, reviewing their work. And, if everything went well, that was great. If there was anything that didn't go well, I was accountable. Okay. So I supervised my nurse practitioners, but they practiced independently. They did not need me in the room to support them. I will tell you that today there are many, many, many doctorate of nurse practice programs around. And I trust nurse practitioners to deliver great care. In general, they are not scheduled as compactly as physicians are in the office setting, in the clinic setting. So you can almost always request upfront, please, extra time. You can go more in depth on a Q&A. The clinical decision making is usually at a very high level, and the quality of the work is very, very good. And they always have the opportunity, if they feel stumped, they can go next door and bring the physician over for a second opinion right then and there. So I don't know if that's the answer that you were looking for, Mindy, but I hope it addresses what you were thinking about. And I have absolutely no idea on civil law about numbrino. So sorry, Kurt. I have no clue what you're talking about, bud. Hey, so I am going to start to wrap it up. We've had about 90 minutes of really robust Q&A, and I've really enjoyed this. Again, I want to get it to the point where we are actively interacting, and not going through text messages and super chats and everything else. I'm and Gothic Brina is helping me. Jules is helping me get there. Calypson's Vixen is helping me get there. Lynn is helping me get there. We are trying to make this the community that we want it to be. And again, it's a community that I want us to be face to face. So we will get there. Cake lady. How long after your water breaks and lose the mucus plug should you deliver? Our driest grandchild is on the way. Water broke yesterday at 8 a.m. Okay, so cake lady, go up above and look at Pitocin, because 8 o'clock yesterday morning, if the water broke, you really want to have a baby really in the next couple hours. You can go 36, 48 hours with the membranes ruptured. It just gets riskier for the baby and the mom to develop an infection. The vagina is not a sterile environment. And so the healthy bacteria that live there can actually be threatening to the baby in particular and to the mom. So that bag of water is actually protective and keeps mom and baby healthy. The longer you go, the higher your risk. So I hope that you get your newest grandbaby very, very soon. Nancy D, thank you for coming back and giving me more information. The stress test is just to compare to my last one of a few years ago. I refused as my friend who is heart anesthesiologist at Yale. No reason he looked at my test. Nancy D, it sounds like you did the right thing. If it's just a matter of routine, then I would ask the cardiologist, well, if it's routine, why don't we wait another year? Now, I will tell you, and I don't know the cardiac literature, there will be journal articles that your cardiologist relies on that says, hey, this test should be repeated every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? And I will tell you, in my world, in the OBGYN world, it's changed. We used to do pap smears every single year. Well, we don't do them every single year because the science has evolved to a point where we now know that going more than a year in some cases is perfectly safe and appropriate. So I don't know what the cardiac literature says, but your cardiologist will. There's a reason why she or he is saying now is the time to retest. Just ask for what's behind that decision, right? What studies are you looking at that tell you that this has to happen now instead of next year or in 2 years? Great question, Nancy D. And again, thank you very much for bringing those questions forward. And I think we have done it. Folks, this has been great. I will tell you, I'm going to apologize in advance. We are not going to have a program on Thursday. I will actually be at a meeting and unable to join. I am going to try to do something over the weekend, but if I can land it, I'll be at this meeting Thursday and Friday. If I can figure it out and put something in on Saturday, I will make sure I give you at least 24 to 48 hours notice by posting it in the community and putting a thumbnail up. Next week, again, planning on Monday and Thursday, and bringing you some really interesting guests. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, especially on short notice. Thank you to my moderators, Gothic Brina, Jules, Lynn, and Calypson's Vixen. Thank you again to Sally, my brilliant graphic artist in the UK, who has helped kind of modernize our look and help to make this just better and better visually, right? Making it more pleasant. And and again, I'm just grateful for this community being so overwhelmingly positive. It's again, your willingness to share these truths, these stories, these events in your lives, it's really overwhelming to me. But by talking about it, I'm hoping that we are strengthening one another as well as ourselves. And, again, keep in mind, why are we here? It's really to leave our community not as beautiful, but more beautiful than it was given to us, and really lending a hand, because there's a lot of people in this group that are suffering with pain, suffering with a setback, suffering with a mental health challenge that may have them down. Let's keep in mind, we want to hold a hand out. We want to help others. But as I always say, we have to take care of ourselves if we're going to take care of one another. So it's not selfish. You're allowed. But do take care of yourself. And I will look forward to having you back here soon. Again, take care of yourself so that we can take care of others. Take care, everybody.
I will tell you without hesitation, I will tell you that I did not have this anywhere in my 5-year plan, Mr. Anderson.
That much I believe. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. Make sure that you take care of yourself so that we can be taking care of others. I'll look forward to seeing you in the coming days. Again, Kurt, Jules, thank you so much for making this a very dynamic conversation today. I'm grateful for your help.
Oh, kill me now. Please tell me this guy's doing some fraud and there's going to be like an insurance investigator or something.
So, Fred, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experience, and can't wait to bring you back, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it. You won't have to try hard. This was a lot of fun. So thank you, everybody.
You hear that? I get the rest of the day off from doctor's orders. That's what I hear.
I will write that prescription anytime for you, sir. And, this will not be our last conversation, especially if you can get me Samantha Lawrence on the show.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll see you before the hearing next week. But thank you for the honor of being your first guest, Joe. And
you bet.
All the kind words. Appreciate it.
Please, let's make sure that we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. Thank you so much.